Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Friday, and this is the conference tournament betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today are Mike Calabrese, Greg Waddell, and the return of Mr. Charlie DiSturco. A lot to get to on arguably the best day, non-tournament, of March, the best non-tourney day. Just a loaded slate across the board, lots of futures action in play, bets all over. Should be a great sweat from noon until after 2 in the morning. We will cover two marquee games, build out a Moneyline underdog parlay, and each give out our two best bets. Before we do get started, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And also, as I mentioned previously, BBOC is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Anyone out there that had both Villanova and Boston College, shake it off. It's a new day. Don't let your past mistakes turn into more mistakes in the future. Greg, I think we have to have some accountability here. We talked about Wisconsin's three-point shooting and Maryland's three-point defense yesterday, and Wisconsin came out and did not miss. I think they were 8 of 10 to start, and I said we should have never brought it up.
Yeah, it was a record-setting performance. Stuck. Listen, some days you just get hit like that, okay? I feel like I was on Maryland yesterday. I think I started 0 for 7 on bets, including everything I brought on BBOC Live yesterday morning. The good news, I hit my last 2 last night, 2-bet winning streak right now, and it's a new day. Positive shooting regression, positive betting regression.
Well, I think our second best bets, at least, both hit. We had UT Arlington and Baylor, which got to the window. So a little bit of redemption, but yeah, horrendous call on Wisconsin, who was up, I think, 45 at one point or something like that. It was like analytically final with like a minute to go into the second half. Shout out to Haslametrics.
If you guys want to feel better, by the way, you took the points. I took them to win outright. So I think if anybody owes an apology to the audience, it's me. Like, I was the furthest away from actually hitting that bet.
Well, and DeBundo had Utah, I think Utah State minus 12 with a push in overtime. So he was living right with that one. But let's jump right into the madness with our first best bet. I will say my best bet was going to be North Texas, who I would have loved today if Scott was going to play. This is a team, they've lost four of their most important players, have missed 34 games, including 29 in conference play. But now Scott, one of their most important players, abdomen issue, ended up going to the hospital. I don't know if he's going to play. I'm keeping an eye out. If he is, then I'm definitely playing North Texas. But I'm going to go with Pitt here, plus 7.5 against North Carolina. I make this closer to 5.5. This is a Pitt team that can play with Carolina. They can limit them on the offensive boards. And this is a team that's playing much better, top 20-ish level since February 1st. It's because their freshman guards are playing a lot better. And, Carrington and Lowe and Legette's playing well. And you have a guy like Hinson who can go off. North Carolina, their defense has been incredible. They've played very well the last 2 games. A little bit of selling high here in the Tar Heels. They still, in my opinion, have some looming defensive regression coming. This is a team that outside the top 300 in open jump shot rate allowed, yet teams can't make them. They're the 96th percentile on unguarded jumpers per synergy. Pitt has the horses to make threes. It's a very good shooting team. I think the Panthers hang with the Tar Heels here. So give me Pitt catching a little over a touchdown tonight in what's been a very chaotic ACC tournament. Charlie, I'll throw it to you. Where are you going for your first best bet?
Yeah, heading over to Florida versus Alabama, match number 3. And I'm taking the Gators here with the points. I just don't get why this is around 4 right now. I think this is closer to a coin flip. And if we've watched those last 2 games that Florida and Bama have squared off in, it's been close down to the wire each time. Florida went into Bama and took them to overtime, and then they come back and they absolutely blow the doors off them. Rylan Griffin is questionable. I'm not sure Nate Oates pushes him too hard, given the fact that, they've won the SEC tournament last year. They have, an NCAA tournament to go out and prepare for and win. While Florida, they're going to want to get back right after losing to Vanderbilt in the final game of the season, and then what was one of the ugliest performances I've seen against Georgia, barely holding on to win. I think a lot of the edges here point in Florida's favor. They're a top 5 offensive rebounding team in the country. Bama outside the top 230. They are top 85 in free throw rate. Bama outside the top 300. They foul a lot. Their interior defense is extremely vulnerable, and they're trending downward. Over the last month, Bart Torvik has this team outside of the top 50 in terms of efficiency. So I think Florida is going to catch Alabama here sleeping. I think Alabama's kind of ready for the NCAA tournament. UF, as scary as they've been against lesser opponents, they play up to the big dogs. So give me the Gators here, +4.
Any concerns, Charlie, about the Hack-a-Samuel technique? Do you think that's going to carry over? Alabama's just going to send them to the line after shooting, 9 for 23 against the Bulldogs?
I tweeted out that every team should Hack-a-Samuel at this point when the game is close. But, the last time he did play Bama, he was perfect from the charity stripe. So maybe some good juju coming. And if not, you can go with a guy like Hawk or Hand-Lockton's even a little bit better and get rid of Samuel for those offensive, defensive possessions.
Yeah, the Bama defense is trending. It seems to be getting worse with each passing game. They can't get a stop. They have no rim protection at all. But maybe just giving up less than 1 point per possession, which is Samuel's rate, you just foul him the entire game.
Yeah.
Maybe that's their best course of action. 23 an SEC tournament record, 23 free throw attempts, only 17 points for Samuel in that close victory yesterday. But I also have a future on Florida, so I'll be rooting with you. Greg, where are you going for your first best bet?
All right, this is my I ain't no punk, don't back down game of the day. I'm going to stare Greg Gard directly in the eyes and treat him like Juwan Howard did a couple of years ago. I don't believe this Wisconsin team is a good basketball team. I think that's been the case for the last month and a half. They were on fire. They looked like the Harlem Globetrotters yesterday, as you alluded to. I don't believe that's who they are. I don't believe that's what they can do again. They were 16 from 25 from 3. I mean, 60% from 3 in a game. The game was over. I don't think we learned much other than, wow, they started 5 for 5 from 3 and Maryland mailed it in. If they do that again today, I'll tip my cap to them. This game is going to come down to who makes shots. The thing is, I truly believe Northwestern's a much better shooting team than Wisconsin is. They're 6th in the country in three-point percentage. Wisconsin is horrible at guarding the three-point line, 349th in three-point percentage defense this year. The Badgers have not had back-to-back games since the middle of January where they've made 40% from 3. I think they're going to miss a couple early here. Remember who they actually are. This is a team that has NIT DNA, mind you. None of these guys last year participated in the NCAA tournament. Northwestern is healthier. Ryan Langborg is back. Ty Berry's obviously out for the season, but you go back to that first matchup between these two teams, guys. It was a tie game with 2 minutes left at the Kohl Center in a game that Wisconsin made 50% from 3. Northwestern shot poorly, 28% from 3 that game. I think that bodes well. Northwestern needs to make shots. They got the best player on the floor. Are you really going to back Chucky Hepburn against Boo Booey? By the way, that doesn't feel good. Take Northwestern. And if Greg Gard slaps me around again today, we're going to have a conversation tomorrow, boys.
Stubborn Greg. I will say, if Wisconsin keeps shooting like this, my Final Four ticket that I've almost threw in the trash would have life. Any concern though without Nicholson with that interior defense going up against the bigs of Wisconsin?
Not too much, to be honest with you. So the first time these two teams played, Nicholson actually came off the bench, and he did play 23 minutes, but they kind of did it by committee with Hunger and with Preston. I think those guys can hang. Stephen Crowell only had 6 points in the first matchup. It was the Max Klesmit game. He went off. Again, aberration to me. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. But this is a go back to who you are Wisconsin game for me. We'll see what happens.
Calabrese, where you head of your first best bet?
I'm going to go to the MEAC semis and take Norfolk playing in their home city laying the 2.5. They're the top team in this conference. They have been the entire year. They swept Howard in their season series. They beat him by 19 at home just 8 days ago. And the Spartans' calling card is forcing turnovers and scoring in transition. They score 13 fast break points per game. So the handicap is pretty simple because Howard is one of the sloppiest teams with the basketball in the entire country. 15 turnovers per game. That's 349th. So all they need to do is just up the pressure, because when they get 15 or more turnovers, they were undefeated in MEAC play this year. I think they do it. The only thing they need to avoid here is a 3-point barrage from the Bison, because they are the best shooting team from long range in this conference. But barring a 11, 12, 3-pointer outbreak from Howard, I think this is the right side. So I'll go ahead and take the hometown team here.
Yeah, I like this as well. Norfolk with that, their funky zone and they'll press. And Howard is graded out poorly, very poorly against zone, kind of disrupts all their action, and against press. And Norfolk State, their half-court offense is great. They want to get out and run. They're much better in transition. And Howard's transition defense is abysmal. So a good matchup here for Norfolk, who is undefeated on the season at home. All right, good stuff with our first best bets. We will have another later in the show, but it's time to turn our attention to the Big 12 and our first marquee matchup of the day. We're going to talk a little Baylor, Iowa State in one of the Big 12 semis. Iowa State, last I checked, small favorite here. I'll start the discussion. I will say, I have a Baylor future. I'm sitting this one out. I still don't know why Baylor was 8-9 to 1 with the Kansas injury questions when, and Iowa State was close to 3 to 1. When we knew these teams were going to be close to a pick in the semis, which they both got to with relative ease. No Langston Love for Baylor does hurt a bit. Seems like that they're going to err on the side of caution and make sure he's fully healthy for the NCAA tournament, even though he came back last weekend. But I actually lean Baylor here. They can do some things on a quick turnaround with their zone defense. Their defense has been better since going to more zone. And Iowa State, not a 3-point shooting team. You can zone them. In the first meeting, when Baylor went to zone, they only scored 0.6 points per possession. Iowa State's zone offense grades out okay, but they went up against some horrifying zone defenses. You're talking Iowa, DePaul, West Virginia. They just tore them apart. But against Baylor, they had a lot of trouble. And what do you need to beat this Iowa State defense? You need outside shooters. Baylor has them in spades. I lean Baylor, but this game probably just comes down to, does Baylor make their threes or do they not? You want to keep an eye on turnovers, so they're going to have to take care of the ball here. But in the first meeting, Baylor made 12 threes. They won. If they can make a high percentage of the threes, I think they win again. Charlie, what do you think here?
Yeah, I lean toward Baylor with you here. No real play for me, but I think that they will have a little bit less of a turnover issue than they did in the first matchup with Ray J. Dennis and whatnot. And of course, it comes down to that 3-point variance that the last couple of games, it seems like Baylor's not been able to find its stroke in the second half. They kind of woke up against Cincinnati, and that's an opportunity to keep it going here against Iowa State. I think this matchup is, kind of on the line. It's right around a pick 'em, in my opinion. And so I'm going to stay away. But if I had to pick a team to win this one, I do think the Bears shooting ends up winning.
Greg, do you have a little more conviction here?
I do, yeah. There's that video that goes viral like once a month of the girl who's like right on the edge of the cliff, and then her friend just runs in and pushes her over the edge. That's what I'm going to try and do with the two of you right now. I'm all the way in on Baylor here. We love them from a futures perspective. We got to back that up now that we're in the big moment, and we get them essentially with a plus sign next to their name for a point here against Iowa State. I like them to win this game. Stuck, you mentioned Iowa State's offense. It struggled against the Baylor zone in the first game. Iowa State's offense has fallen off a cliff since the first time these two teams played. They're 5-1 outright in their last 6, but they've played 5 games against teams that are Oklahoma or worse in the Big 12 standings. Since February 15th, Iowa State is the worst offense in the Big 12 conference, 122nd nationally. It's not good. Like they have a lot of guys who were consistent double-figure scorers until January that are not doing that right now. It's Taman Lipsey, it's Gilbert, it's Momcilovic. They're just different guys. Baylor, on the other end, has not shot the ball well in 2 consecutive games. That's honestly a good sign because they have not gone 3 consecutive games this season without shooting 40% or better from 3. They shot, I believe, 23% and then 26% last night. And they've been at their best against the elite defenses this season. In 3 games against KenPom top 6 defenses, they shot 47%, 52%, and 40% from 3. They're going to make shots tonight. Iowa State's offense doesn't have the firepower to keep up.
Kyle Reese, you're going to make it a clean sweep?
Yeah, let's make it a clean sweep here with Baylor. Just to piggyback on Greg's point there, they needed to prove it against elite defenses. They did it. The Cougs are number 1, Iowa State number 2. They beat Iowa State, and then they take Houston to overtime and played really well in that game. So they were able to crack those defenses. So I have that. And then the other side, I still haven't trusted this Iowa State offense outside of playing at Hilton throughout the entire season. They just suffer too many sustained droughts. They're barely in the top 100 in second half scoring this year. And I think this is where this game is going to flip. As long as Baylor doesn't get out of the block slow and it's a close game at halftime, I really like them and their staff to make the adjustments because they've been an elite finishing team in the final 20 minutes of games, ranking 5th nationally in second half scoring margin at plus 6.6 points per game. So I trust Drew in that regard. And then the last piece of it is, a lot is made of the Iowa State defense, but shot quality actually ranks Baylor's defense much higher than any of the other metrics. They have them all the way up to 8th. And I think a big part of that is what you were talking about, Stuck, with their zone giving teams fits, and Iowa State just doesn't have the knockdown shooters to take advantage of it. So I think the wrong team is favored here. I'll go ahead and take Baylor.
All right, clean sweep for Baylor. Sick 'em. Go Bears. And hopefully they're moving on to the championship in the Big 12, where they will either face Houston or Texas Tech. All right, let's shift focus here and move to our Moneyline underdog parlay. I'll kick things off. Let's start with a medium-sized dog. Let's go with Ohio State. It's a team that's completely rejuvenated, playing with a ton of confidence. 6-1 since firing Chris Holtman. They're 12th in overall adjusted efficiency per Torvik over that span, which is higher than Illinois. They're going to have some trouble defending in the half court. That Illinois offense is awesome, but Ohio State is a very good transition D. That's huge against Illinois, which is just deadly, led by Terrence Shannon in transition. So yeah, I'll take a shot here with an Ohio State team that's playing extremely well with a ton of confidence against an Illinois defense that still has many issues. Charlie, you want to throw in your Moneyline underdog?
Yeah, let's keep it around that medium-sized underdog here. I'm gonna go Providence over Marquette. Without Tyler Kolek, they've been Marquette's been flirting with danger a little bit. 2 losses and then 2 wins by just 6 points, and that was Villanova in overtime, and then Xavier, which was pretty much a down-to-the-wire game until they pulled away. And, free throw disparity ends up giving them a win by 6. But I think this game should be closer. You mentioned, Ohio State's been making this push. Well, Providence is making a push as well for the bubble. And it wasn't really a great day for bubble teams yesterday. Everyone, it seemed like, won except for Villanova. So I think the motivation edge is definitely there for Providence. They need this win to, push them over the top, or at least get them in consideration. And they have a decent path toward maybe making a run to the Big East finals here. They could take advantage of Marquette's perimeter defense, which is not great. And, their biggest issue is turnovers, but without Kolek, that does leave a little bit of a lapse in that Marquette defense. And Providence, they're an underrated top 20 defense in terms of efficiency. They guard the inside well. So all this culminates in what I think is more of a coin flip game. So happy to take Providence as an underdog here.
Yeah, the only thing I'd be worried about is Providence legs, not a deep team. And they asked Devin Carter to do so much. And what he played probably 38, 40 minutes each of the past 2 nights. Doro probably played, averaged probably 35, somewhere around there. So I would be a bit worried about their legs, but
at least
Marquette also is coming off an overtime game.
I was gonna say, at least they beat, Georgetown by 18. So they didn't have to, as much as they did, were on the floor. At least it wasn't as taxing as per se, like playing 2 close games down to the wire. You get one game to kind of warm up and then a second game beat Creighton, and now you're here.
Yeah, it was curious that Carter was on the floor all the way to the end against Georgetown, which I was scratching my head. I was like, if you want to make a deep run here, you got to get him all the rest he wants. And yeah, you mentioned the bubble. The bubble is crazy. Usually more teams play themselves out than in, but it was a bad day yesterday to be a Villanova or Indiana State fan, because it seemed like everyone won. Everyone was saying, hey, New Mexico just played themselves in, but who were they? Like, someone's got to be jumped here, and everyone is winning it. Colorado, St. John's, Providence, the list goes on of teams that had to win and did win. And we know that the A10 is now going to steal a bid, and don't be surprised if there's another league that has a bid thief as well. But starting things off with Providence and Ohio State, Greg, where are you going?
Doc, let me get a quick rant off. By the way, you mentioned Devin Carter on the court in garbage time. What has happened to our beautiful sport? We're just trying to game the metrics. We're trying to improve our net rank by playing our superstar 40 minutes in a blowout instead of trying to make a run in the conference tournament. I miss the good old days of this sport. Anyways, I'm on Florida here. Just a quick thing to throw out. People that have watched Green Dot Daily in the last couple of weeks or anything on the Wonderful Action Network know this. I've known Charlie for about 8 days now, personally. We've agreed on 2 bets on camera together. We're 2-0 with comfortable wins both times, so I want to be just like him here. He hit all the big points on Florida with his best bet earlier in the show. I just think Alabama is extremely fraudulent, guys. They're 2-8 against KenPom top 30 opponents. The metrics love them because they blew out bad teams early in the season and they lost a bunch of close games to teams that are actually good basketball teams. If they lose another close game here, I'll feel fantastic about it. Florida's been better than Alabama. Since February 1st, they're 23rd nationally. Alabama's 31st. That defense has fallen so far. Take the Gators. I think there's really good value on the money line here.
Greg, do you have any wood you can knock on in your office just to make sure that Bama doesn't hit 17 threes like Wisconsin did? Like, I'll do whatever we got to do to get Florida across the finish line here. I agree. If they make those shots, they're in it. But if not, Alabama's defense is just the absolute pits.
Yeah, no, you're right. I do have a wooden desk here, Calabrese. I'll hit it. But anytime that I'm backing Todd Golden should be a sign that something's wrong with me mentally.
Well, I will say that this is a moneyline underdog, and you're going up against Alabama, high variance with their 3-point attempts, which is what you want with a moneyline underdog. Alabama, top 10 offense, defense outside the top 100. Never seen a team with that profile make it past the Sweet 16. Let's keep that in mind when you are filling out your brackets. Calabrese, close us out here. Where are you going with your moneyline underdog?
I'm surprised I'm getting such good payout odds on Utah State, plus 145 against, the Aztecs. Listen, they split the season series with San Diego State. They've won 8 of 9 straight up, including quality wins over Boise, New Mexico, and the same Aztec team. And San Diego State's offense is just trending in the wrong direction. 102nd in Torvik offense since February 1st. And when you dig into their underlying metrics, it's even worse. 252nd in effective field goal percentage with a turnover rate in the mid 200s. And I think that kind of plays into what Utah State's calling card is, which is they don't beat themselves and they never get run off the floor with big runs. They've conceded just 2 kill shot runs all season long, which is the lowest total in the entire country. And I still think they have the best player on the floor in Great Asabor, who just got to the line 24 times in the last game. I think that's going to build some confidence and have him play better in this third game against San Diego State than he did in the first 2, where he had 17 and 7 in both meetings. He didn't play poorly, but I need him to put the team on his back, get a double-double with 20-plus points. I think he can get it done, and I think there's a lot of value in the plus 145.
Yeah, and with this matchup, a lot of times it just comes down to who's going to make more outside shots. I'd argue you trust Utah State more to do that, but increases variance in this matchup where the post kind of neutralizes each other, and don't hate this call at all. All right, so we got a pretty juicy moneyline underdog. Good luck to all of you who are following along. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. Do appreciate that. Let's move on to our second marquee game. We're going to go to SEC country, head down to Nashville, talk a little South Carolina, Auburn. I have no feel here. I'm kind of close to the number. Auburn dominated the first matchup, but Auburn has not beat a tournament team away from home all season. I just don't trust them away from home. I'm close to the number. This is a pass for me. Charlie, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately a pass for me as well, but I do lean Auburn just because I think, when you push comes to shove and you look at how each other lines up against in the defensive metrics, Auburn has every single advantage here. But the fact that they're playing away from Neville Arena really does scare me a lot. Auburn's equipped to slow down this SC offense that I think is a bit fraudulent. I could easily see a double-digit win here. Janai Broome is a complete matchup nightmare for just about any team in the SEC. So Wouldn't be surprised to see another blowout from Auburn, but again, like you said, playing away from home, they just have not performed up to standards. So ultimately, a stay away from me.
Greg, you're passing too, but any commentary you want to add?
Yeah, I am. This just feels like a wide range of outcomes matchup, right? Like if Auburn wins, I think it's by 20 plus. Like they just either they overwhelm South Carolina or they don't. If South Carolina is in the game, it's going to be a close game, which I think would make me lean Auburn because I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. I don't trust Auburn in general, like you said, Stuck. They're 1-5 against KenPom top 30 opponents outright. I think a lot of the same concerns I have with Alabama are the same concerns I have with Auburn. Like, can you show me that you can beat anybody besides each other once this season before we get to the NCAA tournament? I guess we'll see this week. South Carolina did keep it close against Tennessee. I mean, they were down double digits for much of the second half, but kind of backdoored it late. And I do think matchup-wise, South Carolina could have some success on the offensive rebounds against Auburn. They're 56th nationally there versus the 219th defense. So add it all up, I'm just staying away. I don't want to touch this game.
Calabrese, pass for you as well, but do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I want to tip my cap to Lamont Paris. I think he squeezed as much out of the South Carolina team as possible, but I'm just not going to race to the window to bet on a team that got dog walked in the jungle by the Tigers by 40 points. So like that's a pass for me. But on the Auburn side, all of your concerns are legitimate. The guard play still leaves a lot to be desired on a game-to-game basis. So I'm just not comfortable laying beyond 2 possessions with Auburn here.
All right. Enjoy the SEC tournament. Should be 2 fun ones today. But before we get out of here, we have one final best bet each that we will give out. I will kick things off with the Johnnies. I'm going with St. John's. I think this line is a little inflated since UConn has just been so dominant and so good. It'll be scary. You could be up, 20, it seems, against UConn. It doesn't matter. They're still going to find a way to cover. But I think St. John's can have some success here. They can live in the mid-range. You can have some success on the offensive glass, but UConn forced you to live in the mid-range. St. John's very comfortable there. And I expect them to ramp up their press today on a quick turnaround. UConn's press offense has been bad this year. One of their only vulnerable areas, if you look metrics, I think they rate out below average, maybe a 23rd, 24th percentile per synergy. And St. John's obviously is going to press a lot, but I think they ramp that up even more here. Johnnies are playing so well. I mean, this is a team averaging just under 90 points over their past 6 games, where they rate 12th overall per Torvik in adjusted overall efficiency. Yes, they played some bad teams, but they dominated them. They also, dominated Creighton and dominated Seton Hall as well, playing just looser and freer. A little nugget here to note is Pitino in his presser said, look, it's March. You got to play super fast. Don't think. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. St. John's might also be an over target come tournament time, but I think Johnnies are playing too well to be catching this many. Charlie, this is also your second best bet. Do you want to add anything here to the Johnnies?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first bet that I made. I just think it's a complete line overreaction. As you said, UConn has been playing extremely well of late, but also think back to the last time these two teams played. UConn was just 3.5-point favorites in Madison Square Garden. Obviously, that was without Caravan, but then you factor him in and you're like, well, maybe they're 4.5-point favorites. Then you factor in, well, it's not a true home game for St. John's, and you're at 6.5, 7. This is just such an inflated line here for a St. John's team that, as you mentioned, is rolling. Their top 15 per Bart Torvik in the last month. That's because of the emergence of Jordan Dingle finally finding his offensive groove. RJ Lewis is playing out of his mind as well of late. I just think that all this culminates in a tighter game. The motivation edge is definitely there for the Johnnies. We talked about the bubbles. Like, they're still probably in, but there's so much randomness that can happen over the next few days that their spot is not comfortable. So I'm expecting an all-out effort from the Johnnies. Brought out the hoodie right now, the New York City basketball Johnnies hoodie that Greg knows very well from our discussions on Green Dot Daily a couple weeks ago. I'm going to continue to buy the Johnnies here plus 9.5.
Yeah, and that Johnny's extended pressure matchup zone can kind of disrupt what UConn wants to do, especially if they're pressing at an increased rate. And St. John's over this past 6 games, past month, as you said, top 15 overall in adjusted efficiency in a lot of metrics. Over that span, teams are shooting 39% from 3, just outside the top 320. So they even have some potential regression in that aspect. So let's go Johnny's little tag team there. Hopefully it goes better than the Maryland bet that we had yesterday, Greg. But where are you going for your second best bet?
I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Stuck a couple days ago on this very program, I gave out Purdue plus 100 to win the Big Ten tournament as one of my favorite conference tournament week futures bets. That's not even juicy, and I still thought it was one of the best values on the board. I can't run from the moment just because it's 7.5 in their first game of the tournament now against Michigan State. A Michigan State team, mind you, whose offense is ranked 200th in college basketball since the last time these two teams played a couple weeks ago. It's bad. Tyson Walker is hurt, and they do not have answers in the half court. Now, they made some shots late in the second half against Minnesota. They got out in transition, got some layup opportunities. They really did not solve anything in the half court, to my eyes, in that game. The first time these two teams played in Mackey, Madi Sissoko started the game at center. He's the only center Michigan State has who can even pose any sort of physical problem for Zach Edey. He played 1 minute in their win over Minnesota. He's out of the rotation right now. He's been unplayable. Painter's been owning Izzo for the last 4 years. 8 of the last 9 of this series Purdue has won. And if we really want to talk motivation, guys, yeah, I get it. It's Tom Izzo in March. He wants to win always. Banners, yeah. Michigan State punched their ticket yesterday. The more they win in this tournament, they go up to the 8-9 line. They don't want to be on the 8-9 line. There's not a world where they get up to a 7 or a 6 here. I think this is a game where Purdue rolls. Keep in mind, they were up 15 for much of the second half in Mackey Arena. It ended up being only a 6-point game. I think Purdue gets a statement win.
Yeah, Michigan State just had absolutely no answer for Edey. Calabrese, you started off with some Miak, and now you're going to close out with some whack.
So Seattle catching 5.5. If you had the opportunity to watch them against Grand Canyon, if you're an ESPN Plus lover like I am, they looked really good in both matchups against, the Antelopes. They beat them at home and they scored 88 at their place and took them to overtime in a loss, covering both games. And it all comes down to Cam Tyson, who is a Seattle area legend. He played his high school ball in suburban Seattle, all-time leading scorer at his high school, started at Idaho, then he goes to Houston. He would have been really interesting if he stayed around at Houston. Like, that's a team that could have used one more shooter, and he was a lights out shooter in his one season there, but he wanted to be the featured guy. So he goes back to his hometown, and he is an absolute flamethrower. He's always been a knockdown 3-point shooter, but he has 5 4+ 3-point performances in his last 6 games. So they're going to hand him the ball and say, go shoot us into this game. So I'll go ahead and take the 5.5 because Seattle knows who they are. They know what they want to do offensively. They're 16th in lineup continuity, and they have 3 scoring guards and 2 in addition to Tyson, who all average over 13 points per game. So they have the firepower to hang around in this game, and all the pressure's on Grand Canyon. They've been toying with being in the top 25 this whole year, but they're not getting that large bid. They have to win this tournament. So the pressure, I think, is squarely on GCU. I'll go ahead and take the dog plus 5.5.
Yeah, I have a Seattle future primarily just because they match up so well with Grand Canyon. Go back to last year. They swept Grand Canyon in the regular season. They did lose in the conference tournament by 5. And this year, both meeting super close. I mean, the fact they took Grand Canyon to overtime this year, won at Grand Canyon last year, says a lot. One of the most underrated home court advantages in the country. They just match up really well. Seattle, very good half-court defense, great defending pick and roll, great defending in the post and in isolation. That's everywhere where Grand Canyon wants to work. Schumacher, great on-ball defender, has really given Harrison trouble, kind of just frustrates them whenever they play. And then you mentioned Cam Tyson, who can take over a game. So, yeah, I like Seattle's chances here. Jump shooting team, jump shots got to fall, but I think this one will be close. All right, good stuff, gentlemen, on this lovely and fantastic March Friday. Enjoy all the action. Thanks to Mike, Greg, and Charlie for joining me. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. A couple final reminders before we sign off. Make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Also, BBOC is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That'll do it for us. We'll be back same time tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We also will have a live bracket reaction show on Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then tons of shows next week. Big Bets on Campus, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have a bunch of previews on our podcast next week, starting with Sunday night bracket reaction, in addition to the live show. Tons of stuff coming. Good luck on all of your wagers today and throughout the month of March. Enjoy the madness. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Cheers.